Hi, I'm Brie.
And I'm Charlie.
And we're the
TBI rock stars!
Yeah.
Guitar riff here.
Yeah.
As some of you may have noticed, I've recently changed my name in the last couple months. We may do a video post about that sometime, but maybe not. I have a blog post. I'll put a link in the notes if you want to know more. But today, we're going to talk about the sweet spot.
Of functioning. Staying functional to the best of your ability.
Yes. Finding that balance between doing enough to stay sane, but not doing too much so you get impaired.
Mm-hmm. Tricky balance. Very tricky.
It's taken me years, and sometimes I still mess up, so...
Oh, I mess up all the time. We're going to give you advice about it, but by no means have we perfected this art of staying functional.
It's very true, actually. So, the first thing I'm going to say is our ability to perceive what we can do is impaired when our brain becomes impaired. So it's not only that, like, I've been doing certain things for decades without any problems, and now I can't seem to do it, and I have trouble, like, processing that. It's really just our actual perception of our abilities is messed up.
I think that we all have this internal process of knowing from experience what we're capable of doing.
Oh, yeah.
And that we base that on our entire lives. Like, I've been able to pick up 50-pound bags of grain for my horses since I was, 14. So why should that have changed now?
Right. It doesn't make any sense, right? But so some ways to deal with that are to talk to your caregivers or people in your life and believe them. They are not lying to you. They have no reason to lie to you. They are telling you the truth.
Do you feel like occasionally with you and your caregiver there's been power struggles?
I wouldn't call it a power struggle. It's really like I'm a strong-willed person. And when I believe I can do something, I really feel like I can do it. Like, I feel like I should be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And it was hard to reconcile that with her saying, I shouldn't drive, or I shouldn't go out and have fun, or I shouldn't do this or that. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to listen.
What was the hardest thing for you to give up?
I'm drawing a blank right now. I don't know all of it.
For me, it was like, roller. Yeah, that's true. For me, it was lifting heavy things. Like, It took me a really long time to understand that if I do lift this bag of grain right now, I'm going to have a headache for a week.
Have fun. It was nice having a life for a second.
Right, exactly. It took years of repeating those mistakes before I started to understand that it's not worth it. That I am going to humble myself and ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Or simply some things aren't going to get done, and it's not the end of the world. That's been really hard for me. Like, when there's a work has to be done, I like to do it and get it done, and it's done, and it's done. But since my brain injury, everything needs to be planned. I do things in like these little painful increments.
Yeah.
So an easy task takes a long time, and that's hard to deal with. But that's just
right.
That's just the truth.
Like, weed the garden becomes 5 minutes of weeding the garden for the next 2 weeks. Yep. Right? That kind of, yeah. And like, you better set a timer on your phone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to say about all this is that I really feel like our society puts a lot of emphasis on us being human doings rather than human beings. And so the way we perceive ourselves as valuable is how we can answer the question of what you did today.
It's true.
And so when the answer to that is, I lay on the couch, I couldn't watch TV, I didn't feel well enough to read a book, stared into space, and I still exist, and I remembered to eat lunch. Right? Like, that just, your self-esteem can really, like, really fast. And then it makes it really tempting to do things, even if it's a bad idea for your health or your recovery.
Yes. I think this is particularly a challenge for people who really like to get things done. Like,
the overachievers.
I really like to get things done.
And isn't like every brain injured person an overachiever?
Pretty much.
Like, welcome to the club.
I've not met any lazy brain injured people. I've met only people who do too much over and over, just like I have, and really struggle with say like stopping, doing less. One of the answers, or at least for me,
Yeah.
to this little quandary of how much to do is doing less than I think I can. Sometimes significantly less than I think I can, and that sucks because it's like, well, I'm leaving a little money on the table, but in reality, my perception being off, and unexpected things can be more draining. Like maybe someone says something upsetting, and that that emotional response eats up a lot of energy.
Yep.
And now I can't do quite as much as I want because some schmuck said something rude.
Right. Like,
and I resent that, in case you're wondering.
Little things come
Right.
up because it's still life.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to cope with the unpredictability of life post TBI because your resources are so much lower. So we were going to talk about some of the times when you're most vulnerable to making terrible decisions that will lead to being horribly overdone. And I'm going to go first and say that one of the things that is most tempting to me is that I'm a really social person, and then it's pretty isolating to be home recovering all the time. And so when I get invited somewhere to do something, like whether it's with my family or a group of friends or whatever, I really, really want to say yes and to be able to go and function. And like, I don't care if I'm laid up for 4 days afterwards. If there's any way in hell that I can make it work, I'm good. Like, I'll do that to myself. Not that that's the best choice, but you know, group activities are definitely like a temptation for me to just really overdo it.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, getting back to, you know, your human doings thing, I remembered that. That was pretty great. Wow. Since I'm a task doer, it really helps me to see something physical that I've done in the world. And so when it goes too long where I can't do things, and I'm at home where I see the millions of things that need to be done, even if I forget them over and over again, it's hard not to be like, that cat litter needs to be moved. It's needed to be moved for a week. It's driving me fucking crazy. I'm just gonna move it.
Right.
And then I get a horrible headache, and my ability to have a conversation decreases, and it's just bad all around. And
what's been the most tempting thing for you recently where you overdid it? Was it the peas?
Oh, I guess I did. See, I tell you things, and then you share them with the world. So, garden, it's almost spring here. It's like nipping towards spring here in Vermont. And I damn well wanted to get some garden peas planted. And so a couple days ago, I weeded, I hoed, I hauled compost, I evened it out, I planted those damn peas. I even put little labels on those peas. And now for the last 2 days, I've been way overdone, and I have a headache.
Imagine that.
It's
so
very
weird.
shocking. Oh my goodness, how
I'm
does
so
this
surprised.
happen?
So surprised.
In this case, I don't regret it because I was fighting against weather. Like, it's going to start raining and be raining for like the next week. So if I was going to get the peas in, it had to be right away.
So that's kind of the thing about it, isn't it? Is that you always have to be kind of like weighing these decisions.
Right. There's this, like, these are kind of smaller things or minor setbacks that we're talking about that you run into daily that you need to decide on. Like, is it worth the headache, which is my tell of overdoing it? Is it worth the headache? Is it worth the brain fog? Is it worth getting dizzy or having poor balance or whatever it is for you?
And it's important to know those signs for yourself of when you can tell physically that you're overdoing it. It's important to try and pay attention to your body enough that when you get those warning signs, you listen to them and that you know what they are. Yeah.
Right, because in the end, it's more efficient if you actually stop when you get those warning signs, because then you will actually overall end up with more energy because you are not impaired and actually be able to live more life.
The more often you cannot go over the line, the less time overall you have to spend in this foggy, weird, surreal state of existence.
Right, where there's hours and hours of the day and there's nothing of you to spend it on. You can't do anything.
So how do you weigh those decisions for yourself? Like how, like you were saying, like, okay, I'll take the headache because the weather, like I can't control the weather.
Well, I think it's my priorities. So I prioritize writing. I write a blog. That's like something I use my energy for. Yeah, and then social events, I try to get out socially, and that's a priority. And so for those things, I try to save myself for those things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a good point, like to have some idea of like your main priorities in life, like the things that will keep you happiest, and make sure that you're putting your limited energy towards those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I do want to like bring a little note of warning into this. If you ignore the signs,
which no one with a brain injury would
no one's
ever
ever done
do.
that. So
we
there's
always make great decisions.
Right. So there's the like little things where you overdo it for a day, and you only pay for it for a few days or whatever, or you overdo it for over and over, and then you pay for it for like a week or whatever. And then there's this times where you have a situation in life because your abilities have changed, where what you can do is actually far less than what you are required to do to maintain your life, such as having a job that you can no longer do.
You know nothing about that.
I did that for 2 years, and that was, if it was just like the complete and utter pain and like cannibalization of every ounce of energy to make that job thing happen, like maybe it would have been okay, like, because I really wanted to be able to keep my job. But what is not okay, and what was the result of that action or that choice to continue to work beyond what I could do, is my impairment's worse.
Like overall, like at a baseline, you feel like it's really kind of...
I am less functional now than I was 6 months after my head injury. 10 months maybe.
Yeah.
Because I ground myself down over and over, overdid it, and eventually my intellectual ability stopped coming back. And actually, I know the exact time I worked through the week. I had this routine of like my abilities grinding down, my emotional regulation grinding down. Then I'd recover over the weekend and be able to like face the day.
Yeah.
And then those abilities never came back, and still haven't. So that's my note of warning.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to tell other people going through this, because it's really important to rest. just rest.
It's boring as hell.
But how do you cope with resting? Like, how do you help yourself make good decisions? Like, we're gonna go into strategies now, and again, we don't necessarily have these perfected, but here, I'm gonna pause it because that's saying.
Yeah.
And we're back.
We thought you didn't need to hear a loud siren.
Yeah.
I didn't want to either.
So strategies, I think, for me, I know that I just really get lured into doing too much when my self-esteem goes down too far, or I feel too isolated. And so for me, it's important to kind of find little substitutes, like whether it's doing your trick of like having a phone call with a friend once a week where I don't have to leave the house, I don't have to get dressed, I don't have to drive anywhere, but I'm still getting some social interaction. I think that's a really good one. And I think the other big thing that I would say is I've really learned to mimic old people and really young children. So one of the things that kept me occupied when I was at my worst was getting children's books out of the library and buying children's puzzles. Like, I mean, like, you really have to give up your ego, right? And just like do the things that you need to do and be the weird person that's like...
Yeah, I spend a lot of time, like the things I do generally I do with people at least 2 decades older than me.
Like, right, so like you're mimicking old people. Right.
Yeah.
Play Mahjong. Exactly.
Playing Mahjong. I also found like something with my hands, finding something I liked with my hands, which in my case was crocheting. That was really helpful. Even if I never had made the blanket, like just having something where I created something, that was
like
priceless.
A simple repetitive thing that you can do even if your brain foggy.
Right, that's it. Like finding the thing you can do even when you're all messed up.
Right, so that you have a go-to. So when you're tempted to go do something big and wild, you rein yourself back in and you've got other options that are not just sitting and staring into space.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, was there anything else you wanted to say about that? I
I
think,
don't remember.
honest answer. I think that I will just add that I think it is really important to have a social network as best you can, and it's also really important if you have the ability to have a little bit of a plan in place, and like Kim said, to just keep it less than you think you can actually do, because it's very easy, especially when you're overdone, to just default to saying yes, and that's really that's a dangerous thing.
Yes, especially if you're a people pleaser like me. It's very
Who
dangerous.
knows any people pleasers?
I've never met.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll wrap it up. We'll leave you with that.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.